Hey everyone, Chelsea here from A Frugal Homestead. Today we're going to talk about spaghetti squash. We have a ton of it. It's actually one of the few squashes that my husband and I both enjoy and our children enjoy it. I like it because it is a winter squash, and that means once you start harvesting, you can have it for months and months and months if you store it right and you make sure you take care of it. So I'm going to show you kind of how we grow our spaghetti squash and then show you when to harvest as well as how we cure it. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, this is our smaller spaghetti squash panel. And you can kind of see here, it's just like a hog panel or a cow panel for fencing. And we have it a little bit at an angle. In the past, I've tried I actually had onions here this year growing, so that I kind of utilize this space. But on the other side, I'll show you I have cabbage growing. So that's a good way to kind of utilize the shade and stuff. These spaghetti squashes are actually doing really well. You'll notice here they're turning yellow, which is what we want. We want it to be a nice, solid, beautiful yellow color. Now, how do I know when they're done? Well, there's a couple of signs. These ones aren't quite ready, but I'm going to get in close here. You actually take your nail and you poke it in there. Okay, and if it comes out and you can actually make a mark, then it's not quite ready. The other sign is your stem. If the stem here, if it's not quite brown yet, get a little closer, see how it's still green? Then it's not really ready. And you can actually leave your spaghetti squash on the vine until it dies, just like you might do with pumpkins. That's totally okay, totally normal. Nothing's gonna happen to them. They'll be just fine. Okay, here's our other spaghetti squash panel. It's a little bit bigger. Let me zoom out here. And you can see down here, I have our cabbage. And this has actually worked really well this year. I think I'll continue to do this even when we rotate where we plant our squash. The squash, for the most part, has grown up the panel, but it's given shade to this cabbage. And we get into the 100 degrees in the summer months, and that can really do a lot of havoc on cabbage because it's a cooler weather vegetable. So if I'm growing it in the spring into the summer, you know, it needs some shade to stay cool. And our cabbage has done really well this year. So that's actually worked out good for us. But if we come in here, we have so much spaghetti squash and we have a lot of earwigs. Hello, earwigs. We're like earwig central this year. But look at this spaghetti squash. You can see that it's not quite the yellow that we want, right? It's kind of got kind of a marbly kind of look to it, and we don't want that yet. So we want it to really be solid yellow as much as possible. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes you have to harvest it. It's going to be like this. It'll still work out. Okay, but the reason you want to leave your spaghetti squash on long until it kind of dries out a little bit, I guess you could say, is because spaghetti squash has a lot of moisture. It has a lot of water. If I harvested this right now, it'd be too green. It would taste green, and it wouldn't shred like a spaghetti squash should, and it is just full of water. It's like a watermelon almost. But we love spaghetti squash. Here's another one. This one is a newer one. You can see how green it is. Almost like a green pumpkin, right? So he's not going to be ready for a while. If we come down here, we see some a little bit lower. They're getting closer. Now, what we've found with spaghetti squash especially is the more sun it gets, the yellower it's going to get. So these ones are back here, and they're not getting a lot of sun, but they are starting to yellow up. So what you can do is cut back some of your vines if you want, if you really want your spaghetti to be in the sun. Or sometimes like this here. Let's move this direction here. So this vine came from there and it's come this way, right? I kind of just let it do its thing. But these ones are going to get more sun naturally because they're in their own little area. Does that make sense? So you can kind of trick your spaghetti squash a little bit into curing a little bit faster. I have a box of cured spaghetti squash here. This is our garage. On this shelf, this is our spaghetti squash shelf. We had 2 boxes. This was a separate one. We've eaten some of that and some of it has gone bad. But this is what's left over from last fall. So we picked this probably the end of October, mid-October, maybe early November. Cured it. So we put it out so that it could toughen the skin. And then a lot of it actually cured on the vine. And then we put it in this box. It is now the end of February, and these squash still look amazing. Okay, like I said, sometimes they do go bad or start getting some spots, but if you leave it in a cool place, you can have spaghetti squash for many months through the winter and even into the spring. So spaghetti squash is a really good thing to grow. You can grow it like we have on the vertical, or if you have lots of space, you can grow several plants in your own garden and have squash through the entire winter. I hope this video is helpful. Let me know in the comments if you grow spaghetti squash or if you have any questions. We'll talk to you next time.